Tom, thanks so much for joining us on Founders and Builders at Slush.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So you just a couple of hours ago got off stage and you were talking about the new kind of state of European tech, SaaS and AI and all that good stuff. What were the key takeaways from that talk?
Yeah, so this is the 11th year we've done it, actually. So I've been a Slush old timer now, but each year we do a State of the Nation report, except it's a state of a region. And every year we've come here, it feels quite meaningful, but this year it feels like an essential moment to really take stock of where the ecosystem is. Last year we got up on stage and we said Europe needs to have this mindset shift, and we felt like mindset generally is this big structural barrier for Europe to innovate, for European ambition. What we've seen in the last 12 months has really felt like an awakening. Confidence is really clearly solidifying, ambition levels rising, execution is accelerating. We got on stage just after Lovable. I don't know how familiar you are with the story of Lovable. I guess everyone knows about Lovable.
Sure, but it's an amazing success story of not only the Nordics, but Europe more broadly. For those that don't know the story, what is...
So this time last year, Lovable had no live product and no revenue. Now they have 200 million ARR and it's a multi-billion-dollar company.
Wow, is it 200 million now?
And it is the world's fastest ever growing company to get to 100 million ARR. So they've done that in a matter of months.
Faster than OpenAI, faster than Cursor.
Faster than anyone. So, to me, it's such a great case study of what we can achieve here. Europe has the ideas, it has the talent, it has everything it needs to build these super consequential companies. Lovable was a great example. Beyond that, it's 28 new unicorns out of Europe this year. That's a record share on the global stage. The ecosystem as a whole is now worth $4 trillion. When we started doing this report all those years ago, we used to measure it in the tens of billions. So you get a sense of just how far we've come. At the same time too, what we also said was Europe as a region is in this big global race. It's not like these tailwinds aren't supporting amazing stories, amazing innovation, incredible scaling in other parts of the world. And there's a few reality checks that we gave too. So, one of the numbers that I think is a simple one is just how much gets invested in European technology every year. This year it's 44 billion. Last year was 41 billion, the year before that 43 billion, and actually it's basically been pretty flat. And we're kind of at the level that we were back in 2019 pre-COVID. So, meanwhile, in the US in the last 3 years, you saw over 500 billion of investment. So it gives you a sense of sort of where the bar's been raised to.
And that 40 billion that you said, 44 this year, is the whole of Europe?
That's the whole of Europe. So it's basically all venture investment in Europe as a whole. And obviously that gets spread across all countries and all sectors. So then what we said was, well, the bar's been raised on us around the world. It's been great that we've been able to start producing companies that are worth over 100 billion. Now, how do we get to producing a €1 trillion company? What does that roadmap look like to create the conditions for that level of outsized success? And so what we tried to describe was what we called 4 missions. 4 missions that really describe the end state of the perfect operating environment.
Mm-hmm. Which is the most important of the 4?
Okay, yeah. So I'll take you through them and then I'll answer that one on which one's most important, because I've got a slightly long-winded answer on that one. So the 4 are fix the friction. So that's basically how do we go from a fragmented country by country ecosystem to one that feels frictionless and that we can operate as one market at continental scale with a single rulebook that basically removes the friction that everyone feels when they're trying to hire across Europe, sell across Europe,
incorporate the company,
etc., raise money. The second one is empower talent. So really that's all about And I think this is an interesting one in the context of 2025. Europe has this amazing opportunity to be the world's best destination for the most ambitious and brightest talent. So how do we create the right conditions to attract, reward and retain that world-class talent? And obviously within that, that's all about things like stock option reforms, where we know that things are still far from kind of the gold standard, visa regimes, this kind of thing. The third is fund the future. So as we just talked about, capital doesn't scale as quickly as our talent here in Europe. We're in effect bootstrapping our future. So how can we get to a place where we build deep, liquid, homegrown capital markets across private and public, where from the very first angel check all the way through to IPOing, we have the ability to support the champion companies that emerge from the region. And then the last one is champion risk. And it's a bit intangible in some ways, but really what we're saying is, how can we better cement the idea that risk culture is foundational infrastructure, as critical as energy or capital? And that's all about, how do we talk about ambition? How do we celebrate success? How do we talk openly about progress? How do we get better at taking risks? And diffuse that not just in our amazing entrepreneurial community, but through our policymakers, through big institutional investors, pension funds, insurance companies, and obviously into the talent base generally, and into our procurers. Those are the 4 missions.
So the third mission, the deep, liquid, homegrown capital markets. I love how you put that so succinctly. In reality, what happens today? European pre-seed or seed checks go into the best companies, and then we simply don't have the capital in reserve to fund A through onwards. Or
so in the report, we've got this amazing chart that I'll try and describe. But basically, on the x-axis, you sort of go on your journey from C to A to B to C and to later rounds, and then it's 100% stacked column, and it shows the distribution of where that capital comes from local sources, from European sources, from the US and other parts of the world. And as you can imagine, basically the US piece gets bigger and bigger as you go to the later stages, because we just don't have the availability of capital once you get into those growth rounds here in Europe. And then generally speaking, what it means is that on a like-for-like basis, if you have 2 cohorts of companies, those in Europe are less likely to go on to raise growth rounds. When they go on to raise those rounds, they are on average much smaller. And so we're really just not backing our entrepreneurs with the same firepower, even though, I think there's good reason to now believe that we have the talent, we have the ideas, we have the capability to build, as companies like Lovable demonstrate, that when you get it all right, it can work.
Mm-hmm. You said before we started recording, I said, if people can take away one key point from this conversation we're about to have, what do you think it should be? And the first thing that you said without hesitation is that now is the best time to build.
Yeah.
What do you think is out there for startups that founders should be taking advantage of, that they might not know about, that are based in Europe?
Yeah, it's so funny because we spent a bunch of stage time talking about the things that we need to fix, but in reality, if you look back over 20 years, there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur in Europe. Just the foundations, the fundamentals, in terms of access to talent. Despite what I've said about the capital base, there's more capital available. So all of these things have improved. And at the same time too, the toolkit that you have available to you now to start and build a company, just the tech toolkit. It's so fundamentally different. The barrier's been lowered so much. So I think, maybe it's a lonely business to start and build a company. I think one of the things that is very, very clear is we've built this amazing community now. So I think just engaging with those communities, engaging with things like this and listening, there's so much know-how and network to tap into. And then, it's exciting to see, because one of the things that we say in our report this year is, we've seen a wave of entrepreneurship that we've not seen before in Europe. There's actually a record number of founders this year that started new tech companies than we've ever seen before, which is pretty amazing.
And with tools like Lovable, the barriers to even getting that first demo into the world.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Lovable, Framer, like all these different things that can help you go from 0 to 1 so incredibly quickly. Anton from Lovable was on stage talking about all these amazing companies that have now scaled to, double-digit thousands, triple-digit thousands of MRR, on products that they built entirely on Lovable, which is, it's incredible.
Yeah. Final question from me, because I always love to get your opinion, Tom, as a VC. So if I could say you can have 3 checks into 3 different companies, but they have to be European companies. It can be any stage, any size. Which are the 3 companies that you would invest in?
Can I talk about my crazy idea for a startup that doesn't exist yet?
100%. And then we're going to put all 3 checks in now.
So I got asked to think about what's the wild startup idea that you'd love to see? And to me, and it comes back to this thing of mindset that we started our conversation with, which is how can you create programmable context that you can basically give someone an augmented filter for how they see the world? So to me, it's how can I make a policymaker see the world like an AI founder? How can I make the kid that's graduating from university see the world through not like the corporate consultant investment banker, but through the eyes of a 20-year-old founder that's found himself, or a 20-something founder found himself now being a near billionaire.
That's easy. You just bring them to Slush. Yeah. Problem solved.
That's it.
That's your startup.
Best context switch you can ever have is coming to Slush. You step in through the doors and suddenly you see this whole new world. It's true.
Yeah, it's our first time here as a show. We've loved it. And Tom, thank you so much for coming on.
I bet you'll be back.
Yeah, we definitely will.